Hello, everyone. I spoke last time about the historical switch, the change in terminology and attitudes between straight Jew hatred and what in the 19th century began being referred to as plain anti-Semitism. And so during the 19th century, what we call now anti-Semitism or secular anti-Semitism or Jew hatred that is not necessarily based on hatred of Jewishness. In the 19th century, secular anti-Semitism emerged, specifically under the current terminology that we use today, and against strength and following by appealing essentially to nationalist feelings and racist motives, and both supported by pseudo-scientific claims and poor, laughable, actually, quasi-anthropologic theories. German philologists studying the origins of language during the 19th century distinguished between what they refer to as the Aryan or Indo-European peoples with their Sanskrit linguistic progenitors. So this distinguished between those and the Semitic peoples with their Hebrew-based linguistic roots. For instance, Urdu and Iranian languages, being Indo-European, are more related to modern French and English. I mean, this is how linguists work. They compare and contrast. So though Urdu and Iranic languages are very close to English, more so than Arabic might be. And the term Aryan itself was lent linguistic derivations from Iranian. So that there are cognates here, you may note audibly, at least. And note that the Iranian word madar, peder, dochtar, brodar, etc. have cognates in English, in the English mother, father, daughter, brother. And have the same meanings as their English cognates. So the term Semitic in the 19th century, before the emergence of racialist nationalist theories, was purely a linguistic term. That's why what I began saying earlier in an earlier episode, that that Arabs cannot claim that they cannot be anti-Semites because they are Semites, that it doesn't work in this case. This is not how anti-Semitism theorists theorized, right? So before the emergence of racialist theories, Semitism was a purely linguistic term. It had noble connotations. It wasn't a bad word. It was actually the French who popularized these forms of classifications, and it was due to their own understanding, or maybe lack of understanding, of the notions of Aryanism and Semitism, that the questions of languages and races became sort of conflated, intermingled, and confused, and anti-Semitism during that period became accepted nomenclature for the expression of anti-Jewish feelings. In 1853, a French diplomat and ethnologist, the Comte Joseph de Gobineau, published an essay on the inequality between the races, Essai sur l'inégalité des races, in which he clearly delineated the differences between what he called Aryan virtue and Semitic and even Latin, he suggested, Latin and Semitic degeneration, end quote. This work, the essay on the inequality between races, would become of tremendous importance to German anti-Semites, among them the great Richard Wagner, the composer. Later, along with the ideas expounded by Gobineau on the superiority of the Aryan race, the allegedly insidious effects of the Jews on the purity of the German people, as revealed by Wagner's writings and the theories of the Anglo-German political philosopher H.S. Chamberlain on racial purity, this would become, the works of these people would become influential and would affect markedly the subsequent racist and anti-Semitic policies that were to propagate throughout Europe during the late 19th and early 20th century, culminating in the rise to power of the Nazis in Germany. But the term anti-Semitism itself was arguably used for the first time in 1879 in a pamphlet published by Wilhelm Marr, a sensationalist, tabloid-type hack journalist and anarchist pamphleteer, and ironically enough, the son of a German Jew. In his stylistically obscene, abusive, and openly anti-Jewish article titled, and I won't put you through the German, but translates into "The Victory of Judaism over Germanism," Marr described the Jews as an inherently materialistic people who had insidiously contaminated the purity of German blood, had developed commerce and trade. Note how the Semites developed commerce and trade, sort of like the Phoenicians, right, in various industries, and who had proposed political liberalism, cosmopolitanism, socialism, and internationalism in order to offset nationalism and to achieve world domination, etc., etc. Haranguing on these terminologies. So anything that opposes nationalism was a Jewish conspiracy. Interestingly enough, Marr, M-A-R-R, his pseudoscientific theories were received with much approbation and were lent further credibility by legitimate and respected contemporary scholars. Ludwig Wilser, Otto Amon, Ernest Düring, among them, would later develop pseudo-anthropological proof of an impending Jewish encroachment on and domination of German culture. This is when the concept, again, initially a purely linguistic and, in a way, innocuous, I would argue, even noble concept, scientific, linguistic, right? When this concept, it was with the writings of these people with various German names that I mentioned earlier, that the concept would turn into a rational form of Jew hatred that is irremediable without the eradication of the Jews. So meaning that the problem of being a Jewish could no longer be solved by converting out of Judaism. The only solution would be the eradication of the Jews. The fact that in some quarters today anti-Zionism is equated with anti-Semitism, and that many Arabists and Arab-Nationalists today are often accused of being anti-Semites, Some have resorted to the excuse that, again, as I mentioned earlier, that they too are Semites and therefore cannot possibly be anti-Semites because that would turn them into anti-self. That does not obtain. And as they say in Arabic, saying you cannot possibly be an anti-Semite because you're a Semite, this is عذر أقبح من ذنب, an excuse uglier than sin, because being an anti-Semite has nothing to do with race and everything to do with being Jewish, even though the racialist theorists give Semitism racial overtones. If anyone is interested in discussing this further or delving deeper into it, I think Walter Lacker's The Changing Face of Anti-Semitism and Bernard Lewis's Semites and Anti-Semites are foundational works. This was short and sweet, but I hope it concludes the conversation on anti-Semitism and the origins of anti-Semitism. And I'm hoping in subsequent episodes that I will begin in earnest a discussion of Zionism. Thank you, everyone. Ciao.